This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. It's Friday, January 16th, 2026. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
More tempers flare in Minneapolis and at the White House.
You're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist.
I'm Rich Johnson.
A manhunt for a migrant accused of ramming an ICE agent's vehicle amid a serious rise in attacks on ICE agents within the last year. I'm Clayton Neville.
Troops from several European countries, including France, Germany, Norway and Sweden, are arriving in Greenland. I'm Karen Chamas.
On Wall Street, stocks are looking for another winning day today. Heading into the Martin Luther King holiday, the markets are closed Monday. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Sheriff's deputies are investigating an alleged break-in at the North Carolina home of former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
President Trump handed the Nobel Peace Prize, and ICE's number 2 stepping down. All ahead on America in the Morning. It's been more than 33 years since a U.S. president invoked the Insurrection Act. President Trump says he might be the next one due to the unrest in Minneapolis. Details from Correspondent Rich Johnson.
In a social media post, President Trump said he's ready to invoke the Insurrection Act if, in his words, the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop professional agitators. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem told reporters outside the White House it's definitely on the table.
We did discuss the Insurrection Act. He certainly has the constitutional authority to utilize that.
Back in Minneapolis, a woman's emotional 911 called the police saying that ICE agents shot her husband. The wounding of that man brought this reaction from Governor Tim Walz.
This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey warned protesters to keep it nonviolent.
We cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with our own brand of chaos.
And the family of Renee Good, the woman killed last week by an ICE agent, has retained a prominent Twin Cities law firm to investigate her death. One of the principals, Antonio Romanucci, told CBS the ICE claim that Good weaponized her car is wrong.
Looking at that video, the speed of the car, the direction it was turned, and what she said to those officers beforehand, the totality of the circumstances would indicate that she did not weaponize her car.
And at a tense briefing at the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt unloaded on Niall Stanage from the D.C. publication The Hill when he listed a number of ICE incidents, including the shooting of Good, and then asked,
how does that equate to them doing everything correct?
Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed her unjustifiably.
Oh, okay, so you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist. And it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat.
The Insurrection Act was last invoked in 1992 by President George H.W. Bush to help deal with protests in Los Angeles. But that came at the request of California's leaders. I'm Rich Johnson.
Protesting against ICE enforcement operations has grown nationwide and isn't limited to states with Democrat governors. Federal officials in Texas announced assault charges Thursday against a man they accuse of using a pickup truck to ram into federal agents' vehicles during an immigration stop in Dallas last month. And authorities in San Antonio are looking for another foreign national wanted for ramming ICE vehicles in a Walmart parking lot this week. Here's the update from Correspondent Clayton Neville.
The manhunt comes in the midst of protests surrounding the ICE shooting of Renee Good, who federal officials say rammed an ICE agent with her vehicle in Minneapolis. ICE officials say there's been an increase in vehicle-related attacks on ICE officers nationwide, with 66 incidents reported over the last year. This week, officials in North Texas filing a federal indictment against a migrant charged with assaulting federal immigration agents back in December.
Holy Watch out front of you! Watch out front!
Federal investigators say ICE officers in 3 vehicles had pulled over a vehicle on December 1st, which was driven by the 28-year-old suspect, Honduran native Gerson Lopez Sanchez.
The indictment alleges that soon after he was pulled over, Lopez Sanchez suddenly placed his vehicle in reverse and rammed the federal agents in the vehicle behind him, while one agent had his leg hanging outside the vehicle just as he was getting ready to get out of the vehicle.
U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Texas, Jake Holmes.
Instead of stopping, Lopez Sanchez accelerated. He accelerated crossing into the wrong lane of traffic in front of him. He was coming into ongoing traffic and he rammed the vehicle, injuring the 2 agents inside.
ICE Director Todd Lyons says attacks against ICE agents can't continue. He insisted that point when speaking with Fox News this week.
Constant impediments, constant attacks like this. And, it's not safe for my folks. It's not safe for the public.
The FBI now offering a $15,000 reward for information leading to Lopez Sanchez's capture. Last year, a migrant was killed after a gunman allegedly targeted 2 ICE agents in a shooting outside a Dallas ICE facility. I'm Clayton Neville.
The top stories of the day are sponsored by Sleep Number. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. And now, the more you buy, the more you save on beds, bases, and more. Limited time. Only at Sleep Number or sleepnumber.com. European nations send troops to Greenland. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. The Friday national forecast is in. Let's find out what today has in store for us. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Today brings another round of windy conditions to the plains as a rather sharp contrast remains between still strong high pressure over Wyoming and low pressure from a storm crossing in the Great Lakes today. That's a setup for powerful gusts, and there should be no shortage of wind gusts in at least the 50 to 60 mile per hour range from eastern Montana and Wyoming, and perhaps as far east as the central Dakotas, southward across western Nebraska and Kansas, much of eastern Colorado, even into mainly northeastern parts of the Texas Panhandle and adjacent areas of Oklahoma. That's the zone where the fire risk should be highest today, centered on the eastern Panhandles and west central Oklahoma, due to dry vegetation and low humidity levels with those gusty conditions. AccuWeather wildfire experts say that a somewhat reduced risk for fires extends from there into southwestern Kansas and through Oklahoma City, Amarillo, even Dallas. The rest of the western half or so of the nation looks quiet today, with high pressure currently appearing rather likely to guard the west against storms through at least early next week. Dry conditions also persist for much of the south, with today bringing a chilly to downright cold start for residents of southern Alabama, much of Georgia through Florida, and into southern North Carolina, as temperatures start the day 15 to 20 degrees below the historical average, even below freezing for some. From the mid-Atlantic to the New England coast, today also looks dry as colder air settles in. However, a somewhat complex storm in the upper Midwest carries a couple of cold fronts with it, meaning a large area likely to pick up some snow today from the Dakotas through northern Missouri, the Great Lakes region, even central Pennsylvania and western New York this afternoon. In Bismarck, North Dakota, today brings gusty winds, colder air, even a snow shower, the high just 17. For Cedar City, Utah, expect sunshine today, high 48. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Simply search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. Several European nations have sent troops to Greenland, which comes as the Danish Prime Minister says the island's defense is a concern for NATO. Correspondent Karen Shamas reports on the latest developments as tensions between the U.S. and Denmark heighten over President Trump's intentions to acquire Greenland.
Troops from several European countries, including France, Germany, Norway, and Sweden, are arriving in Greenland to help boost the Arctic island's security. The move comes after talks between representatives of Denmark, Greenland, and the US on Wednesday highlighted the fundamental disagreements between the Trump administration and European allies. French Poles and Oceans Ambassador Olivier Poivre d'Arvor said in an interview that the deployment sent a strong political signal. Meanwhile, in Copenhagen, locals expressed concern over President Trump's approach.
There are still considerable disagreements. Obviously, I think, as most Danish people, think it's completely unacceptable that
America is threatening the integrity of the Danish kingdom.
Copenhagen resident Bastian Lindberg called it
surprisingly aggressive when we're all supposed to be allies.
Denmark is also increasing its military presence. The talks focused on US intentions to take over Greenland for its mineral resources amid rising Russian and Chinese interest.
When we speculate if they're going to propose a free association agreement, we cannot really say anything at this time because we need to know what's in the small print. We're not going to sell our country just to let it be owned by another country. But we are open to discussions. We are open and willing to see what is it exactly we can participate in order to make sure that you guys are safe and secure as well.
I'm Karen Chamas.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado presented President Trump with her Nobel Peace Prize medallion during her visit to the White House Thursday. The president confirmed that Machado gave him the medal in a Truth Social post, calling it a wonderful gesture of mutual respect. Machado had floated the possibility of sharing the prize with Trump earlier this month, a move that the Norwegian Nobel Committee said cannot be transferred or shared. This as the Pentagon confirmed the seizure of another Venezuelan oil tanker in the Caribbean. When we return on America in the Morning, bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the United States. After these messages. This is America in the Morning. Let's check market conditions with CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a winning day yesterday for the major averages on strong investment bank earnings and better than expected jobs data. Jobless claims for last week came in at the lowest in 2 years, hinting the job market may not be weakening as quickly as people think. Here's Nuveen's Sarah Malik on CNBC.
We are seeing a very strong earnings season so far. And in general, earnings tend to carry markets forward. And we have a good earnings outlook for 2026.
Oil prices pulled back yesterday as it became clear the U.S. isn't immediately going into Iran to help protesters disrupting oil operations. Silver hit a new record high yesterday. President Trump clearing the way for NVIDIA to sell some H200 chips to China with a big surcharge kicking back to the U.S. government. Shares of NVIDIA up 2% yesterday. Taiwan investing $250 million in U.S. chip-making plants in Arizona, which is poised for more new jobs. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick with CNBC's Christina Partsanevelis.
In his words, semiconductor manufacturing is coming home. Listen in.
We're going to build giant semiconductor industrial parks in America, and we are going to bring semiconductors home to America.
Comes really on the heels of a blowout quarter. This is the world's largest chip contract manufacturer, making chips for some of the biggest names in technology, including Apple, NVIDIA, the likes.
Taiwan Semi, meantime, strong quarterly results. Shares were up 4% yesterday. Jobless claims and labor market data yesterday stronger than expected. If the job market is not weakening, the Fed won't feel the need to cut interest rates at its next meeting in 2 weeks.
It looks to me like the economy at the moment is running pretty hot. I think the committee is likely to interpret all that as a good time to wait and see how things develop.
Former Atlanta Fed President Dennis Lockhart there on CNBC. Spotify is raising subscription prices again for its music service just 6 months after the last price increase. Spotify goes up to $13 a month in February.
Just showing that the model has staying power. Their customers are very sticky. The price increases don't tend to send people away from the platform. Spotify encroached on Amazon's territory with the entry of audiobooks, and it looks like consumers have been willing to pay up for that.
Capital Area's Malcolm Etheridge on CNBC. On today's watch list, we get earnings from regional banks like PNC, Regions, State Street, and M&T. New in theaters, Focus features Hamnet. Sony's 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Viva's animated Charlie the Wonder Dog, and Amazon's The Nowhere Man.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, the Deputy Director of ICE leaves her position. The reason why, after these messages. Madison Sheehan has handed in her resignation. The deputy director of ICE is leaving her government job as the number 2 under Kristi Noem to make a run for Congress in her home state of Ohio. Sheehan will be running for the 9th congressional district seat, currently held by Democrat Mary Kaptur, who's now the longest-serving woman in Congress, 4 years longer than Nancy Pelosi. Sheehan's campaign website bears the slogan, "No excuses, let's get it done." Kapur was reelected in November 2024, despite many of the counties in the district voting in favor of President Donald Trump that year. Shifting gears, it's just been weeks since NASCAR driver Greg Biffle lost his life in a plane crash. Now comes word that his home north of Charlotte, North Carolina, has been burglarized. Details from correspondent Gethin Coolbaugh.
Sheriff's deputies are investigating an alleged break-in at the North Carolina home of former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, who died last month in a plane crash along with 6 others. The alleged theft was reported on January 8th. Investigators believe someone entered a safe in the Mooresville home. Sheriff Darren Campbell and his office said a backpack, $30,000 in cash, guns, and racing memorabilia are missing. A public memorial for Biffle and the others killed is scheduled for Friday in Charlotte. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
America in the Morning for Friday, January 16th, 2026 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
President Trump is threatening to invoke a rarely used federal law as protests continue in Minneapolis. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Open enrollment ended at midnight for most Americans. The White House says it has a fix. I'm Joan Jones.
The federal government seemingly reversing course on plans to cancel money for mental health services. I'm Clayton Neville.
U.S. forces in the Caribbean Sea have seized another sanctioned oil tanker.
We are watching the entire shadow fleet.
I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Overdose deaths in the U.S. declined for most of 2025. I'm Mike Hempen.
Grok getting banned for inappropriate behavior. I'm the new old tech guy, Chuck Palm.
Back after these messages. Back now on America in the Morning. You know it's winter when you hear about chilly weather in Florida. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
A chilly start is once again in store over parts of Florida that started out below freezing yesterday thanks to a rather effective southward push of colder air, with places like Tallahassee that dropped to 30 on Thursday morning, getting well into the low to mid-20s instead early this morning as morning lows sink to 15 to 20 degrees below historical averages. However, the cold should be more focused toward the eastern Gulf Coast and the southeast later today rather than across all of the South, because a warm front is on the way through the southern states, boosting cities like Shreveport, Louisiana into the 60s today after mid-50s on Thursday. In terms of precipitation, a storm making its way slowly through the Great Lakes region will be responsible for the latest round of wintry weather continuing today. This will mean a large area where snow continues to pile up into the evening hours, with storm total snow since yesterday of at least 1 to 3 inches from west central North Dakota to central Illinois, across all of Michigan and even western New York and the high ground of western Pennsylvania, and amounts up to 3 to 6 inches, mainly focused from the arrowhead of Minnesota toward northern and western Michigan. Elsewhere in the nation, gusty winds continue in the plains as another cold front helps to reinforce blustery conditions between the area of low pressure connected to that Great Lakes storm and potent high pressure centered over Wyoming. That pressure difference across a relatively short distance means strong wind, and gusts to at least 50 to 60 miles per hour should result from eastern Montana and mainly western and central parts of the Dakotas to eastern Colorado, perhaps toward the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas for a time, where dry conditions will yield a high fire risk instead. Most places to the west of there and right to the west coast should be dry once again today. That's the weather across America. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. President Trump threatens to invoke the Insurrection Act amid protests in Minneapolis, which comes as demonstrations have intensified following the shooting death of a woman who attempted to flee after ICE agents told her to get out of her car, and another man shot by an ICE agent after the officer was attacked. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
We have ICE agents throughout our city and throughout our state
who, along with Border Control, are creating chaos.
You said you discussed the Insurrection Act with the president. Did you recommend that?
No, we just discussed it, that it was one of the options that he had constitutionally. And we talked about the fact that we're going to continue our operations in Minneapolis and have the resources that we need to get the job done.
President Trump is threatening to invoke a rarely used federal law as protests continue in Minneapolis.
The most powerful thing we haven't used, the Insurrection Act.
You're considering using the Insurrection
I've always considered it, but we haven't needed it anywhere. 48% of the presidents of this country have used it. Bush used it, I think, 22 times or something.
The president says if Minnesota officials do not stop attacks against ICE agents, he will invoke the Insurrection Act, which would let him deploy troops.
The Insurrection Act is a tool at the president's disposal. As you know, it has been used sparingly, but it has been used by previous presidents in American history. And I think the president's Truth Social post spoke very loud and clear to Democrats across this country, elected officials, who are using their platforms to encourage violence against federal law enforcement officers, who are encouraging left-wing agitators to unlawfully obstruct legitimate law enforcement operations.
He's repeatedly made similar threats in other states over governors' objections. This threat comes hours after a federal officer shot a man in the leg in Minneapolis after being attacked with a shovel and broom handle. That added to fear and anger in the city a week after an immigration agent fatally shot a woman. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
On the streets of Minneapolis, there's anger against federal officers that's boiling over following the 2 shootings by ICE agents in the past week, and stories of concern after a Minneapolis couple says ICE tear-gassed their family vehicle with 6 children inside, and a mob smashed into an FBI vehicle parked on a city street and stole federal documents and other items. Correspondent Donna Warder reports pleas for restraint from both the federal government and the mayor of Minneapolis are being unheeded.
We cannot be at a place right now in America where we have 2 governmental entities that are literally fighting one another.
Authorities say a federal officer shot a man in the leg after being attacked with a shovel and broom outside a home Wednesday. City Police Officer Brian O'Hara.
The adult male then retreated inside of the residence where he remained inside and refused to come out. Eventually, federal agents made entry into the residence, and the individual was brought to an ambulance where he has been transported to the hospital.
Police say a crowd then gathered near the site with protesters throwing rocks and shooting fireworks. Federal officers fired tear gas.
This is not sustainable. This is an impossible situation that our city is presently being put in. And at the same time, we are trying to find a way forward to keep people safe, to protect our neighbors, to maintain order. And we're in a position right now where we have residents that are asking the very limited number of police officers that we have to fight ICE agents on the street.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says violence involving federal officers has gotten out of hand in the city.
I've seen conduct from ICE that is disgusting and is intolerable.
But Frey says
we cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with our own brand of chaos.
I'm Donna Warder.
Sign-ups for the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, closed at the stroke of midnight in most states. Now the White House has rolled out the Great Health Care Plan, designed to be the Trump administration's fix. Correspondent Joan Jones reports this comes as ACA premiums have skyrocketed without subsidies, and many simply cannot afford health care anymore.
Open enrollment season for Obamacare plans ended at midnight in most states as Americans await Congress to approve a plan that would extend subsidies. The House approved a plan for a 3-year extension. It appears the Senate will counter with a 2-year plan. But GOP senators said yesterday that progress has stalled. Meantime, the White House introduced what it calls a broad healthcare initiative that has 3 specific goals: cutting drug prices, bringing down the cost of insurance premiums, and providing more accountability and transparency from insurance companies. But that plan requires Congress to create and pass legislation with the provisions included. As for the cost of prescription drugs, the White House is busy striking deals with drug makers to lower the cost of certain medicines as part of its most favored nation pricing initiative. Drug makers AbbVie and Johnson & Johnson have already signed on to the program. The Trump RX website, where lower prices will be available, is yet to be finalized. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the second part, bringing down the cost of insurance premiums, would be done by adding to Americans' health savings accounts.
This plan, once put into legislative text and passed by Congress and sent to the president's desk, will stop sending big insurance companies billions of an extra taxpayer-funded subsidy payments and instead send that money directly to eligible Americans to allow them to buy the health insurance of their choice through, you may have heard it be referred to as health savings accounts.
Now, if Congress doesn't codify the initiatives in the president's great health care plan, Obamacare premiums could more than double this year for the more than 20 million Americans who previously received the tax credits. I'm Joan Jones.
Among the stories we're covering next, another Venezuelan oil tanker seized and new Musk app banned in many countries. America in the Morning returns after these messages. A federal appeals court rules that a lower court judge lacked authority in ordering the release of anti-Israel activist Mahmoud Khalil. A 3-judge panel of the 3rd U.S. District Court of Appeals ruled that the judge in the case did not have jurisdiction over the matter. The American Civil Liberties Union released a statement saying the opinion does not take effect immediately and the Trump administration cannot lawfully detain Khalil while he has the opportunity to seek immediate review. Khalil was a Columbia University graduate student in New York who led anti-Israel protests at the Ivy League school. He was arrested in March and detained for more than 3 months in Louisiana and is facing deportation. The Department of Health and Human Services is seemingly reversing course on plans to cancel funds meant to address substance abuse and mental health. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports that while the reason for the reversal is unclear, the terminations through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration were rescinded not long after they were announced.
A day after the cuts were announced, it was learned DHS is reportedly reinstating $2 billion in funds to address substance abuse and mental health. Specifically, the cuts were tied to mental health, behavioral, and substance abuse conditions. Democrats on the House Appropriations Committee are attributing the reversal to Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. having, quote, bowed to public pressure. Critics of Kennedy say he shouldn't have canceled the funds in the first place. Democrats insisting that health policy in the United States has to be thoughtful, not haphazard and chaotic. I'm Clayton Neville.
The Pentagon reports another Venezuelan oil tanker has been seized in the Caribbean. Lisa Dwyer reports.
U.S. forces in the Caribbean Sea have seized another sanctioned oil tanker that the Trump administration says has tie to Venezuela. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says the Veronica previously passed through Venezuelan waters and was operating in defiance of President Donald Trump's established quarantine of sanctioned vessels in the Caribbean.
We are watching the entire shadow fleet and how they're moving. I'm very proud of our Coast Guard, how they've partnered with the Department of War to do unprecedented actions in bringing these flags under jurisdiction that often, or these ships under jurisdiction that in many instances aren't flagged or they're affiliated with a country moving this unauthorized oil to avoid our sanction policy.
It's the 6th sanctioned vessel seized by U.S. forces as part of that effort. The Veronica is currently listed as flying the flag of the South American country Guyana and is considered part of the shadow fleet that moves cargoes of oil in violation of U.S. sanctions. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Elon Musk's XAI's most popular feature is being banned in many countries over inappropriate deepfake images. Chuck Palm has that as the new old tech guy.
Elon Musk's XAI has pulled back on its image features for its Grok chatbot after a global wave of regulator pushback over explicit deepfake images. Some have reported hyper-realistic manipulated images of women in bikinis, degrading poses, and even some involving minors digitally altered. Some of these were not just fringe cases, but thousands that were generated and spread fast across X. XAI says they have now restricted users from creating images of real people in any inappropriate attire in jurisdictions where it's illegal, although they haven't specified exactly which ones. Malaysia and Indonesia have already slapped temporary bans on Grok, while probes are underway in the EU, UK, France, and Italy. Britain's Ofcom welcomed the change but made clear their investigation continues, and the European Commission warned that if these fixes don't hold, they'll bring the full weight of the Digital Services Act. Musk initially downplayed the trend, but this marks a rare regulatory win against one of his companies, forcing a quick turnaround on a tool that made digital undressing too easy and too accessible. The ongoing challenge will be balancing innovation with real-world safeguards against misuse. Follow me on X at The New Old Tech Guy. I'm Chuck Palm.
Here's a look at Friday sports with America in the Morning's Robert Workman.
The U.S. Justice Department on Thursday announced that it has broken up a huge NCAA basketball gambling conspiracy. Pennsylvania U.S. Attorney David Metcalf said the point-shaving investigation spanned 3 years.
It eventually enveloped 17 NCAA Division I programs, 39 players, and 29 games that we allege were either fixed or attempted to be fixed.
The scheme began in China with former college and NBA player Antonio Blakeney, who then brought it back to the States with a number of co-conspirators. Baseball, the Dodgers have struck again. The two-time defending World Series champions have reportedly added the top free agent bat of the winter, outfielder Kyle Tucker. He gets a 4-year deal worth $240 million. Former Dodger Clayton Kershaw announced he's joining Team USA for the World Baseball Classic, which begins March 4th. The lefty wrapped up his near-certain Hall of Fame career with LA's title drive last fall. NBA, the Thunder pulled away late in a 111-91 win over the Rockets. First place OKC has won 5 straight. Spurs stopped the Bucks 119-101. The East-leading Pistons shaded the Suns 108-105. Celtics rallied from down 19 to beat the Heat 119-114. Anthony Simons scored 18 of his game-high 39 points in the fourth quarter. On the ice, the Islanders blanked the Oilers 1-0. 35 saves for Ilya Sorokin in his league-leading 5th shutout of the season. Tage Thompson had a hat trick as the Sabres skewered the Canadiens 5-3. That makes 15 wins for Buffalo in its last 17 games. Golden Knights won their 6th straight, shading the Maple Leafs in overtime. Jack Eichel with the winning goal and 3 assists. Bruins doubled up the Kraken to complete a 5-0 homestand. Blue Jackets buzzed the Canucks. That's 9 straight losses for Vancouver. The first tennis major of the year, the Australian Open, begins this weekend. And so much football. The NFL divisional round starts Saturday. The Bills and the Broncos in Denver, then the 49ers and the Seahawks in Seattle. Sunday starts in New England. The Patriots host the Texans, followed by the Rams versus the Bears in Chicago. And the college football playoff championship Monday night in Miami. The Hurricanes essentially at home to face undefeated number 1 Indiana. That's Friday Sports.
Surprising new numbers concerning U.S. overdose deaths when America in the Morning continues after these messages. The man nominated to be U.S. ambassador to Iceland has apologized after there was Icelandic outrage over a joke he made about the island nation just south of Greenland. Former Missouri Congressman Billy Long privately joked to some House lawmakers that Iceland would be the 52nd state and he would be its governor. Iceland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs contacted the U.S. Embassy in Reykjavik about Long's comment, and several thousand people in Iceland's capital city have signed a petition demanding the U.S. nominate someone else to be ambassador. There's been a measured decline in U.S. overdose deaths. Correspondent Mike Hempen has the latest numbers.
Overdose deaths in the U.S. declined for most of 2025. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says an estimated 73,000 people died from overdoses in the 12-month period that ended in August of last year. That's down from 92,000 overdose deaths in the previous 12-month period. CDC officials say deaths were down in 45 states last year. Overdose deaths have been falling for more than 2 years, the longest drop in decades, but the decline has been slowing. However, experts are cautiously optimistic the downward trend will continue. I'm Mike Hempen.
28 Years Later came out in 2025, and now another installment is in theaters for 2026. Kevin Carr has a sneak peek at 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple.
If you didn't get enough 28 Years Later last summer, a sequel is now out in theaters.
This is a memorial to the dead.
28 Years Later, The Bone Temple follows 12-year-old Spike, who was rescued from the infected by a satanic cult at the end of the last film.
What's your name?
Spike?
No, I think your name is Jimmy.
It also examines the relationship between Ralph Fiennes' character of Dr. Ian Kelson and an alpha infected he named Samson.
When the infected attack, what do they see?
This film is satisfying because you get more of Fiennes' character, who was secondary in the previous film. The story also fleshes out the disturbing nature of the apocalyptic cult.
Old Nick released his demons unto the world of man.
Still, this is a brutal horror film through and through. It's not for the weak of heart or the weak of stomach, particularly the first half, which is loaded with unpleasant violence, gore, and imagery.
I believe the infection can be treated.
If you can stomach it, the last half of the movie improves, and the resolution is strong.
Are you Old Nick? Old Nick? You mean Satan? Yes.
I'm not sure how much more of this franchise we need, but this movie works because it ties up loose ends rather than trying to expand a rage-infected multiverse.
Are you ready?
Well made, but hard to watch at times. 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple gets 3.5 rage viruses out of 5. I'm Kevin Carr, and that's the way I see it.
America in the Morning for Friday, January 16th, 2026 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.